We're back doing another news update in the airport. This time, Lexus reclaiming the sales crown, at least in the first half of 2025 so far for the luxury sales race here in the United States. BMW has been taking it to Lexus for the last 7 quarters. However, that's all changed so far this year. Lexus has just outperformed BMW by over 5,000 sales second quarter alone. Deliveries so far for Lexus are at an all-time record. Now, you might be saying, Kirk, last year they already posted an all-time record for a full year of sales. That is true, but they're on pace to beat that record now. Who knows what the second half of the year is going to hold? We could have supply chain disruptions. We could have tariff conundrums going on. But the fact that Lexus is up could be a sign that the luxury market has flipped. The Germans, especially BMW, has been in control of the luxury market for so long now. And even though Lexus broke their all-time sales record last year in 2024, it still wasn't enough to overtake BMW's crazy selling rates. Now, we know Lexus has taken it to BMW, especially second quarter, but if you look at the first half of this year, Lexus is up less than 500 vehicles, 467 vehicles they've sold more than BMW. That's only about a half day's worth of selling when you combine the entire country's selling across all the dealerships. So Lexus is on a tear, especially in the second quarter. They increased 8.1%, but things are slowing down for them. They actually dipped almost a full percentage in the month of June. And I think that's probably where Lexus is going to keep going the rest of the year, in my opinion. Their sales are going to keep, it's going to be tough for them to keep pace versus last year's record-breaking year. Man, you're getting so much great ambient noise in today's video, but Lexus has a huge inventory problem, and this has been the case ever since the pandemic, to be honest. Lexus would be actually pulling away from BMW if they had the inventory on hand. Cars on Lexus lots only sit around for 18 days. That means the majority of their vehicles are already pre-sold. If you look at BMW, who is in second place just by a whisker, it takes them 46 days to sell a car. That is a huge chasm of success. You might be looking at sales. The sales are almost within margin of error between Lexus and BMW, but the demand is absolutely not. People cannot get enough of Lexus right now, with them only taking 18 days to sell a car on average. Again, BMW taking 2.5 times that almost to sell a car. Now, Lexus's goals in 2025 was actually to sell 350,000 vehicles for the first time. That's an increase of 2% versus a record-breaking year last year. However, they're up 7% versus 2024. It's the best first half ever. But again, June was actually down a percentage point. All right, so if they keep going down a percentage point, the remainder of the year, it's probably going to be a wash, if not a loss compared to the record-breaking year last year. Now, Lexus apparently has a 2-year waiting list for the new Lexus GX, and we don't even have the hybrid variant yet. However, if you want a hybrid GX, just go get the Land Cruiser. That has a hybrid standard, all right? And the TX is also bringing in a lot more sales than Lexus is used to having, especially in the 3-row segment. Families have been, I should say bigger families, haven't had a lot of choice. The LX is always too expensive and too compromised. The GX, way too space deficient for families. The TX definitely fits that bill, but I still have an issue with the TX in that it doesn't offer 7 seats in their hybrid trims. It's only a 6-seater, which is crazy to me. Now, what's actually plaguing BMW, and might not come as a surprise to many of you, is their EVs. Their EVs are down 21% in quarter 2 versus quarter 2 of 2024. Now we have the EV tax credit on its last legs. Again, that's getting kicked out September 30th. And BMW is actually advertising a $400 lease deal on the i4. Again, I don't know how much cash down that is. I don't know how many miles that includes, but it's just letting you know that like a $400 payment on a BMW, that is bargain basement pricing. It's letting you know that the market has flipped not only for BMW, but for BEVs as well. Isn't that crazy? You have all these BEVs from BMW. The BEV sales are down over 20% versus last year, at least in the second quarter. And then here's Lexus with one EV, the RZ, and they are breaking all-time sales records. This is also very interesting. Leases are completely different between BMW and Lexus. 40% of BMW's Q2 sales were leases. That's actually kind of low. These manufacturers want leases to be like 60, 70+% of their sales. However, Lexus is only at 25% lease penetration. That is insane. I've never seen it this low, or at least when I was selling, we weren't at 25%. So the market doesn't seem to want to lease right now in the luxury segment, which is weird. Now, leasing has been a bit overpriced the past 2 years, ever since like the chip supply issue. So there are better deals probably on financing overall. But why is BMW's lease so high, or lease take so high compared to Lexus? Well, simply because of BEVs. You lease a BEV, you get that $7,500 tax credit. So that explains the massive 40%, well, I should say, it's still not that high, but 40% lease penetration versus only 25% for Lexus. Lexus just has one BEV to take advantage of that lease tax credit, which all those tax credits, lease or not, they're all going to be gone September 30th. Now, what about Mercedes? Well, Mercedes stopped actually reporting sales figures a couple of years ago, so it's really hard to compare versus other manufacturers. But it does look like Mercedes sales have dipped 6% to just 142,000 vehicles. That's still pretty high, to be honest. But if you look at quarter two alone, Mercedes is down 12%. Mercedes is not looking very strong right now. Audi is down 20% in the second quarter. Volvo's deliveries are actually up close to 5%, but their EVs and plug-in hybrids have declined 5 to 6%. I have a Volvo XC90 at home, a T8 Recharge plug-in hybrid, so I'll give you guys my driving impressions of that vehicle with the refresh. And Genesis is seeing big success as well. Genesis saw 17% sales uptick to almost 20,000 units. Infiniti spiraled down for the 6th consecutive quarter, with sales tumbling 13% in the second quarter to just 12,000 units. Essentially, Genesis is outselling Infiniti by like an extra 7,000 to 8,000 units. That is absolutely insane how far Infiniti has fallen. Infiniti really just has one viable option in my opinion right now. The QX60 is hard to recommend because they got rid of the V6. The QX80 is fantastic, twin turbo V6, plenty of luxury, plenty of body on frame goodness. But the Armada exists, and the Armada is 99% as good as a QX80, but costs a lot less. All right. So thank you guys for watching. I got to get this video up, edited, and then I got to hop on a plane. I'm heading to LA to drive all 5 generations of the Prelude before the new one comes out, supposedly later this year. Fingers crossed we don't get any delays on that. But I'll see you guys in the comments. Do you think this is the beginning of Lexus retaking the market? Or is this just a short-lived victory for Lexus, as BMW has been eating their lunch for the better part of the last decade, or even more? Mercedes was really strong for a while too in the past decade, but they're falling. Infiniti's falling. Luxury brands, BMW still holding on, but with the lack of EV demand, it'll be interesting to see what happens to them later on in the year. Lexus actually looks like by far the strongest luxury brand heading into the second half of 2025. Will they beat their all-time sales record? I'm going to go out and say no, they're not going to beat last year's sales record, but it's going to be close. I'll catch you guys in the next one.